President Trump absolutely flipped out on a reporter a few days ago, and he continued to push his fraudulent, rigged election theory. Take a look.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, if the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden on December 14th, will you concede the election?
It's going to be a very hard thing to concede because we know there was massive fraud. So as to whether or not I can get this apparatus moving this quickly, because time isn't on our side, everything else is on our side, facts are on our side. This was a massive fraud. This should never take place in this country. We're like a third world country.
Just to be clear, if the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden, will you concede?
Well, if they do, they made a mistake because this election was a fraud. Just so you understand, this election was a fraud. I mean, they have Biden beating Obama on Obama's vote in areas that mattered in terms of the election, in swing states. And yet he's losing to Obama all over the place. But he's beating Obama in swing states, which are the states that mattered for purposes of the election. So, no, I can't say that at all. I think it's a possibility. They're trying to, look, between you people, don't talk to me that way. You're just a lightweight. Don't talk to me that way. I'm the president of the United States. Don't ever talk to the president that way. All right, I'm going to go with another question. Go ahead.
So if the Electoral College does elect President-elect Joe Biden, are you not going to leave this building?
Just so you, certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that. But I think that there will be a lot of things happening between now and the 20th of January. A lot of things. Massive fraud has been found. We're like a third world country.
You know that it's tradition for previous presidents to go to the next president's inauguration. So will you attend?
I don't want to say that yet. I mean, I know the answer. I'll be honest, I know the answer, but I just don't want to say it yet. Look, a thing like this possibly has never happened before, but maybe people just didn't catch it. But we've caught it. We've caught hundreds of thousands of votes. Listen, excuse me. When they don't allow a poll watcher, which is a sacred person in our country. People don't know what a poll watcher is. A poll watcher it's considered sacred in our country. When they throw them out of rooms.
But that's not true. They didn't do that.
Sure it is. And when they put them in pens. Excuse me. No, they didn't. My attorneys did not admit anything.
I mean, it's really amazing to watch this. So, yes, his claim on the poll watchers is nonsense. It's not true. First of all, when they count the votes, everywhere in the country, there's Democrats and Republicans present. That's the first point. So you already have, like, the way the system was set up front, there actually are poll watchers embedded in the process as it is. That's the first point. Okay, so there are already Republicans all over the place. But the second point is, yeah, the poll watchers were all allowed to watch. There were just other rules that they had to abide by. So in some instances, they were too close, for example. They would get way too close and it would be intimidating for the people counting. So they had to back up a little bit. The other instance is a lot of these people who are embracing the conspiracy theory wholeheartedly, they talk about how, oh, well, there was one place where they tried to cover up the windows where they were counting the votes. But in that instance, they don't tell you the next part, which was the reason they were doing that is because all of the voters' information were available in that case. So you had like addresses and phone numbers and things of that nature. And they wanted to protect people's privacy. So they did that. So he's embracing a narrative that's not true, but it makes him feel better emotionally, so he's all in with it. But when the questioner's like, dude, the thing you're saying about the poll watchers didn't happen, he just lies and railroads her and acts like, no, it did happen. And then the other thing is, she's like, your people admitted in court that what you're saying isn't true. He's like, they didn't admit anything in court. Yes, they did. In fact, in some of these states where they were claiming fraud, the lawsuits didn't even accuse fraud. You want to know why? Because when you're in a court of law and you actually have to prove it, you can't just make wild accusations and assertions with no evidence. And so even though they're publicly saying fraud, and going on right-wing outlets and saying fraud, they couldn't even bring a case that tried to establish that there was fraud because there's no evidence of fraud. And then the other thing is just the sheer number of failures. So they lost, I think, all of their cases or almost all of their cases. So there's been over 30 failures. Over 30 failures. If you were going to make the case, this is where you had to make it, and you didn't make it. It's kind of embarrassing. In the year 2000, when George W. Bush and the Republicans took that election, the vote came down to one state, Florida, and the difference was a little over 500 votes. And so the legal team found a way of like counting only the votes where you got rid of like the hanging chads or the dimpled chads or something like that. I know that sounds dirty, but it's not if you read about that, the history of the hanging chads thing. And they found a way to get the election for George W. Bush, but they had the best legal minds in the country working on it around the clock, and they had a coherent case. Whereas now, Trump's got Rudy Giuliani with hair dye dripping off his sideburn on his face. He's got one nut popping out of his zipper. That's probably the next thing that's going to happen as he's talking. And he got Sidney Powell, who's certifiably insane, just a complete and utter lunatic, who's making the most ridiculous claims you can imagine, honestly believes that like Venezuela or Cuba have rigged the Dominion voting machines and parts of it were made in Venezuela or Cuba, as if Venezuela or Cuba want Joe Biden to become president and are willing to do something like that. I mean, it's beyond ridiculous, right? But like, this is where we are now. But here's the interesting takeaway, in my opinion. I think Trump has actually convinced himself that he won at this point. Like at the beginning, and I polled this, I asked you guys early on, what do you think Trump really believes on this? And the overwhelming majority of you were like, he knows he's lying. He knows he's lying. But then a story came out the other day where apparently Trump, on the night of the election, Trump was walking around the White House muttering under his breath, I won, I won, I won, I won. Because, at the time when the votes came in, what did they do? They counted all, in most states, they counted the votes from Election Day first. And those votes went overwhelmingly for Trump because he was telling Republicans vote on Election Day. And the mail-in votes were overwhelmingly Biden. So when just the votes on the day were being counted, it looked like he was winning everywhere. It looked like he was winning Wisconsin and Michigan. He didn't win there. But he was muttering, walking around the White House muttering, I won, I won, I won, I won, I won. And so I used to think, well, he's clearly lying about, what happened in this election. No, now I think he actually has convinced himself that he's correct. And that it is fraudulent, it is rigged, and that he did win, and that, he thinks he's correct. Now, the only other case I would maybe accept is this idea that he's a pathological liar, and in that instance, it almost doesn't matter in his own mind whether or not he's telling the truth or lying. It's almost like it doesn't even fall into those two categories in his own mind. Like when you talk or when I talk, we're thinking as we're going, like, am I saying things that are true? Like, is everything I'm saying falling in the true category? Like, that's how a normal person functions. A pathological liar just says shit, and whatever comes out of their mouth, in their mind, it doesn't even fall into the category of true or false. It just is. And so I would accept that possible description that he's not thinking about true or false. Am I right or wrong? It's just like, it just is. I'm speaking into existence stuff. And so that's possible, but I really do think that he believes he won because he's been so persistent and he's been so relentless. And with that story of him muttering, I won on election night, and the little tidbits of information he gets here or there that he then uses to construct in his mind a narrative as to how it went down and how it was stolen from him, I think that he really believes that he won, which is hilarious because he keeps getting destroyed in court because there's no evidence because he didn't actually win. He didn't actually win. And there's an explanation for every single thing he's talking about here. Like, oh, he beat Obama in places with black voters. Okay, well, I don't know where he's getting that from, and I would never take something directly out of Trump's mouth at face value. But these guys underestimate, like, a lot of the country really fucking hates this guy, man. So there were a lot of people who were driven to the polls out of sheer, like, holy shit, Donald Trump's a mess and he's the president. And they don't have to like Biden to vote like that. See, this is what he's discounting. Like, he talks about the enthusiasm for his people. Yeah, there are plenty of people who really love him. But, like, there are plenty of people who hate you, and that was their sole motivation for getting to the polls to vote for you. And then beyond that, you told your people not to vote by mail. You kept saying it was fraudulent. You kept saying that, that's not the right way to vote. And you kept telling people show up on election day. So then they did that. And then are there going to be some people who maybe would have voted for Trump who were scared to go to the polls because of COVID, but you just said don't vote for them by mail, so they just didn't vote. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that happened. It's possible he shot himself in the foot by making a case over and over and over not to vote by mail. But yeah, so it wasn't surprising at all when the mail-ins come in and they're 80% Biden. Of course they were going to be 80% Biden. Mail-ins already lean Democratic. Then when you add in the fact that you're consistently saying, hey, don't vote by mail-in, yeah, of course that was going to happen. Of course that was going to happen. And when he says a lot's going to happen between now and then, he's asked if he's going to go to the inauguration. He's asked if he's going to leave the White House. By the way, he says, quote, certainly I will, and you know that. So yeah, he may go kicking and screaming, and he may go not acknowledging that he lost, but he'll go. Right? But then when he says a lot's going to happen between now and the election, that's just the part where it's just delusional. Like, you're losing all these court cases, the votes are getting certified, the results are getting certified. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? You're not going to get like a clownish coup going, because I got news for you. The military and a lot of the intelligence agencies aren't so hot on Donald Trump. So, like, what do you think's going to happen? Oh, a lot's going to happen between now and then. You think you're going to overturn the election results between now and then? It's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. You're going to swing 3 states where the vote margin is over like 10,000 votes? Are you out of your fucking mind? It's not going to happen. So, I mean, it's just so weird to watch in real time an American president be this ridiculous. I mean, I'm used to seeing them be ridiculous, and I'm used to seeing them be war criminals. But this is another level. This is another level. It's just non-stop nonsense. It's just a tsunami of bullshit emanating through his mouth. But listen, I do now believe that he actually has convinced himself that he won. But the real interesting question is, so yeah, he's going to be out of the office on January 20th. It's going to happen. But then I think the real question is, will he go to the inauguration? And all you guys seem really convinced that he's not going to go. I lean in the direction that he's not going to go as well. However, I will say this. I think somebody can make the case to him that actually it's a massive cuck beta move if you don't go, because every other president has gone to the inauguration of the next president. He might be like, okay, I guess I got to go. Because it would look more beta if he doesn't. But having said that, there's a story we're going to get to later about a possibility that he floated, which is just so Trumpian, and it has to do with the inauguration. So again, we'll get to that. I don't want to spoil it now, but the next question is, so he's gonna be out of the office, but the next question is, will he go to the inauguration? Yes or no? I think it was like 80 or 90% of you said that he's not going to go. I think he's not going to go too, but I'm only like 60-40 or 65-35. Yeah, let's go 65%. 65% I think he won't go, but that's a healthy percentage that he might actually go. So who knows, but he got snippy, didn't he? Jesus Christ, he really lashed out. Don't you dare ever talk to the President of the United States like that. Don't you ever do that. I'm the President of the United States. That's some elitist bullshit, by the way. That's some elitist bullshit. A journalist can't ask you a tough question and can't be aggressive because you're the President of the United States. What happened? I thought you were all about the average Joe and Jane. No, you pulled the elitist card the second that, you felt challenged. Don't you dare talk to me like that. I'm the President of the United States. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. You're saying dumb things, and so they're going to try to hold you accountable. At least this is a rare instance where the media is actually trying to hold you accountable. It's actually nice to see every now and then the media be like, no, what you're saying is actually not true. Stop. So he's all up in his feelings, man. Ever since he lost, he is really, really all up in his feelings, and that's clear to see.